For this lesson, we're going to be talking about frequency tables and dot plots. So this is the first packet in the paper-clipped packet that you would have received Friday in class. If you do not have a copy of this and you would like to use it on OneNote, I'm going to remind you how to navigate to your OneNote. Now, you can either use the OneNote icon, and if that doesn't work, you can go into Schoology. You can find your math course. On the side right here, it says OneNote Class Notebook. You can click on that. And then yours would say log on to OneNote or something down here in purple. Go ahead and click on that, and then it will bring it to what you need. If you can't find it, you just probably need to let it load. So at the top, once it loads, you will need to find Chapter 9 Statistics. If you don't see it up here at the top, click this down arrow and more things will show up. And if you need it, we're on this first one, frequency table and dot plots. You'll also notice in OneNote that everything is filled out, but I will be doing this lesson just plain as it is. So this is where you can go to make sure that you have a copy, or if you need a copy, this is where you can find it. So let's get started. So frequency table. Frequency means how often something occurs. So this is used so we can kind of figure out a better picture. Instead of seeing just numbers in a box, we're able to really pinpoint what we notice about it. So in this box, it says that the data shows the number of hours spent by 20 students in preparation for a final examination. So this would be how many hours. So one kid studied for 5 hours, another student studied for 6, another for 7. Down here would be 8 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. So all of the 6s that you see, that would be how many students studied for 6 hours. So I see 3 6s, so that would be 3 students studied for 6 hours. That information is down here. So this table, this is the frequency table. This first box right here, the number of hours, from this box up here, that's what the numbers represent. So when you're creating your own, you ask yourself, what do the numbers in the box represent? In this case, it was the number of hours. The second column, which is the number of students, you just ask yourself, how many times do you see that number? So for 3 hours, there were 2 students. So if I go back up here, I would see the number 3 2 times. For 4 hours, I should see that number 1 time, and I see it 1 time here. And that's how it's filled in. Notice that there are no number 10 and 11s. I see no 10 and 11 in the box. That means that no student studied for 10 or 11 hours. So we put zeros here in our frequency table. This dot plot does represent this frequency table. Now notice that the dots are the same size. And that they're the same distance apart. So it's very easy to see that 7 hours was the highest number of hours studied by the students. Now this one out here, kind of all by itself, see how there's kind of a big space here? That's called an outlier. It means it doesn't really belong with the rest of the data, and it will kind of lead us to some information once we kind of get going here. So let's try one now. Here's a dot plot that's already been made. you can take the dot plot and you can answer some questions. So let's make sure we understand it first. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 represent the number of headbands. Each dot would represent how many girls, because it says girls right here, own that many. So if there's one dot, there's one girl who owns 4 headbands. 2 girls own 5 headbands. 1 girl owns 6. We have 5 girls who own 7, 3 girls who own 8, 4 girls who own 9, and 2 girls that own 10. The first question says, how many girls are in the group? Well, all we would need to do is count those dots. So if we count all the dots up, we would get 18. So that means there are 18 girls. Now it says to find the total number of headbands. So if we go back, this one student has 4 headbands. These 2 students have 5, so that's actually 10 headbands. So I'm going to write this out in a number sentence using this information here. So there's one girl has 4, and then I'm going to add it. There are 2 girls who have 5. There's 1 girl who has 6. There are 5 girls who have 7. There are 3 girls who have 8. There are 4 girls who have 9. And there are 2 girls that have 10. Now, you would go ahead and put that all into your calculator, and you would get an answer of 135 headbands. Now, because that's a long thing to put into your calculator all at once, you can either break it apart, or I would suggest that you put it into your calculator more than one time. Find the mean. So if you can remember from a while ago, the mean is the average. And we find the average by adding everything up and dividing by what we added. So in this case, there were 135 headbands and there were 18 girls. So I need to figure out, on average, how many does each girl have? So my answer would be 7.5. Now, we know that you can't have half of a headband. But on average, this is what each girl owns. Now, the rest of the questions, we're going to be creating our own frequency tables and dot plots. Now, if the directions do not say anything about a frequency table, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway because that's what we're practicing. So this directions just say to represent the data with a dot plot and give the dot plot a title. We're going to add and a frequency table. So the first part of the frequency table, I should ask myself, what do these numbers represent? So a group of students were asked the number of hours they read for pleasure each day. So this is the number of hours. So in my table, I'm going to start with number of hours. Now, how often that number appears that's how many students. So we have number of students over here. Now I first need to find the smallest number and then the largest number. So the smallest number I see is 0 and the largest number I see is 5. So I have to go from 0 to 5. Now I'm going to count how many zeros do I see, and I'm going to cross them out as I go to make sure that I didn't forget any. So I have 1 0. There is 1, 2 1s. Now I'm going to count the 3s. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now my, I skipped the 2s. So the 6 should go with the 3s. So now the 2s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4s, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2 5s. Now, I can double check that I crossed out all of the numbers, so I included them all in the table. Now, your first part of your table is going to be your number line. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to go all the way to 5. And these numbers down here represent the number of hours, so that's what I'm going to title it. Now, normally we title it down at the bottom, but if you title it at the top, that's fine too. Now, the number of students, that's the dots that are going to go above each number. Now, make sure your dots are the same size and they're evenly spaced apart. That way we can see which has the most dots and which one has the least dots. It's easier to see it visually. So I'm going to put 1 dot above 0. I'm going to put 2 dots above 1. I'm going to put 5 dots above 2. See how they're the same size and evenly placed? So these are all the 1s, these are all the 2s. 3, I'm going to put 6. For 4, I'm going to put 4. And for 5, I'm going to put 2. Now, it's very easy to see that 3 would be your highest. Now, in this case, there are no outliers because it's evenly displaced. It means that there's not any big blanks between. Now, how many observations are there? So it's basically, I'm just going to take all of these numbers, count them up, and I would get 20. So it just means how many people were kind of interviewed or asked. Now, there are 3 more questions that I want you to try. Now, each of these questions has just a box with numbers in it, and no other information is asked. But for each one, you are going to create a frequency table and a dot plot. So I want you to pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and do that. Now go ahead and check your answers. So here's the first one. And go ahead and pause it at any time if you need to fill them in if you did one of them incorrectly. Here's the second one. Make sure that you always have a title for your dot plot. And the last one. So hopefully you did those correctly. If not, please make sure that you go back and fix them.